Did Patsy kill her daughter, JonBenét Ramsey? Today we're going to be talking about that, but also going to be showing you some brand new pageant footage that was from just 11 days before the murder of JonBenet. Welcome back to Moms for Justice. I am Carolyn. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be talking to you about former Boulder detective Steve Thomas and his Patsy Theory, which frames JonBenét Ramsey's death as a domestic incident that began with a single impulsive moment of anger inside the Ramsey house. Now, this is followed by a panicked, improvised cover-up meant to protect the family's social standing. Or is it? This case is still haunting us after all these years, and not only because of the brutality of the crime, but because many questions have remained unanswered for long. On December 26, 1996, 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey, she was found murdered in the basement of her family's Boulder, Colorado home. And this is after her mother reports a bizarre ransom note and a supposed kidnapping unfolds. Despite one of the most publicized investigations in American history, the evidence became entangled in conflicting theories. They mishandled crime scene procedures, and there was intense media scrutiny. To this day, no one has been charged, and leaving the public and the Ramsey family without closure as this mystery continues to fuel debate, speculation, and investigation. Keisha Jones was once a little girl that knew JonBenét Ramsey. They did pageants together, and she came on her own YouTube channel and dropped a video that is brand new as of just a month ago, which shows the pageant that she was in just 11 days before JonBenet's murder. And we're going to watch it right here.
And her favorite food is macaroni and cheese with hot dogs.
That is Keisha Jones.
She has a sister, Crystal, who is 14, and a baby brother, Austin, who is 2.5 months old. Next is contestant number 11, Michael Prescott. Contestant number 12, JonBenét Ramsey. And contestant number 14, Michelle Biggs.
The participation of kids in pageants has been highly controversial to a lot of people. What do you guys think of all that? What do you think of the video that I just showed you? It is taking place in the 1990s, which honestly, pageantry was very acceptable then, way more acceptable then. Society wasn't as protective, in my opinion, of little children at that time. Nowadays, a lot of people would be up in an uproar about it, right? But if you think about it, there is a breeding ground for pedophilia to happen in scenarios like this. Pedophiles, they go where the kids are. And that can be pageants, dance competitions, the playground, and even a church where there's a youth group. This is something that is not uncommon. A lot of people have come after Patsy and John Ramsey about them putting their child into these pageants. Would I do that? No, I probably would not do that. But however, I don't know if I would be highly critical of every family that puts their child in pageants, because I don't think all of them are necessarily thinking that it is a bad thing or that it would attract pedophiles. I also think that a lot of times these children are in pageants because of the same reason Patsy put her in pageants. It was something that she did her entire life. It was something that she grew up on, and she found a joy and a happiness in it. It's not just about beauty. It's about being competitive. It's about dancing, displaying all your talents where you can put them. Now, child beauty pageants, for all their sparkle and family centered excitement, can unfortunately become a breeding ground for unwanted attention, including stalkers or obsessive fans. Now, the visibility of young contestants through public events, media coverage, and now the internet can draw the wrong kind of scrutiny from people who project fantasies or fixations onto vulnerable children. Pageants often include open venues and published schedules and widespread sharing of photos and performances, which create opportunities for predators to observe routines. It's also important to frame Patsy Ramsey with the benefit of the doubt and fairness and compassion, because she likely saw pageants as a joyful mother-daughter bonding experience. And it's a creative outlet where JonBenet could have shined, built her confidence, and enjoy costumes, music, and even friendship with the other contestants. During the 90s, before today's awareness of online risks and obsessive fandom, most parents, including Patsy, simply did not imagine that something as wholesome seeming as a child pageant could be a breeding ground for unsavory people. I personally would not feel comfortable putting my children in all that makeup and all those clothes. But here's the thing, Patsy didn't know anything else. Patsy was in pageantry her entire life. She was a beauty queen, and she saw it as a healthy experience and ended up having a healthy experience with it. I'm not quick to judge her. I really am not. But I do find that this one of the last, because I believe there is one other pageant right after this, crazy that we can see it today still. And I want to thank you very much, Keisha Jones, for putting up the video on YouTube. And I'm so glad I got to share it with you all. Steve Thomas, former Boulder police detective, best known for his work on the JonBenét Ramsey investigation in the late 1990s. He became one of the most outspoken critics of how the case was handled, resigning from the department in frustration over what he described as political interference and a lack of transparency. In 2000, he published JonBenet Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation, and this was a controversial bestseller, in which he laid out his belief that the evidence pointed towards a staged domestic incident rather than an intruder. Whether people agree with his conclusions or not, Thomas remains one of the most influential figures associated with the case. The first thing I want to do is just go over and let's play this 911 call one more time. I know everybody's heard it before, but let's take a listen to it again.
911 emergency. Police. What's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am?
We have a kidnapping. All right, please.
Explain to me what's going on, okay?
There's a note left and our daughter's gone.
A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter?
6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old.
How long ago was it?
I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's
Does it say who took her?
What?
Does it say who took her?
I don't know. There's a ransom note here.
It's a ransom note?
It says FBTC. Victory. Please.
Okay, what's your name? Are you
Patsy Ramsey, I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please.
Okay, I'm sending an officer over, okay?
Please.
Do you know how long she's been gone?
No, I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please.
Okay, well,
There's somebody.
I am, honey.
Please.
Take a deep breath.
Please,
Okay.
hurry.
Patsy. Patsy? Patsy?
Okay, sure, if that's what you believe, what they said there at the end. Now, I first want to thank the Ramsey Case YouTube channel for providing that video. Thank you very much for your content. I was able to show the 911 call and this suggested conversation that apparently occurred after the phone had hung up. Now, when I listen to that, I do not hear what was said there. I do not. Now, what I do hear in this call is a panicked, frightened mother. That is what I hear in this call. I don't try to make it into something that it is not. There's a lot of people out there that have dissected this phone call and have come to some sort of crazy conclusions. But honestly, when I listen to the call, it is simply a mother who is terrified. In Stephen Thomas's view, this was not a premeditated murder and not the work of an intruder. Instead, he says that it is a chain reaction that began with stress and bedwetting and a blow to the head that ended with staging, a ransom note, and a scene that looks like a kidnapping. Now, to build that picture, Thomas first looks at the emotional climate in the Ramsey home in the late 1996 time period. Now, Patsy Ramsey was coming off of cancer treatment. She had had cancer, she had multiple rounds of chemotherapy, and basically got a second chance at life, and one that she was not going to take lying down. She was going to get up and move. This woman had 2 young children, and she realized how precious life was, and she wanted to spend every ounce of time with those kids, raising them and being a mother to them while she had remission. Now, she also at this time, it's important to know what was going on right around December 96. She was juggling holiday responsibilities. We all know that she was very showy about her home and decorating for Christmas and doing all the things. Honestly, Patsy Ramsey would have been amazing at Instagram today. She really would. She was like the social media influencer of 1996. This woman would decorate her house to the nines, okay? She would set things up. She would do dinners, fancy dinners for her husband and his work friends, and she was all about appearances. And I know a lot of people have criticized her for that, but the truth is that she's no different than a TikToker or an Instagrammer today. She really isn't. She was also facing the prospect of a trip to Michigan very early on the morning of December 26th. And this is a trip that they had planned in advance. And she later admitted she really didn't want to take this trip. But on top of that, they had just attended a Christmas party at Fleet White's house on the 25th, making the evening very busy and draining. And don't forget, she also held her own annual Christmas party where there was pretty much anybody and everybody showed up, even some strangers, which is crazy. That's definitely something that has to be looked into. But Patsy was tightly wound, and she was a perfectionist, image conscious, and deeply invested in the appearance of her family, which fits with her background in theater and beauty pageants and her journalism degree, her emphasis on presentation and performance. Now, inside the home, there were ongoing problems with the children that added to this pressure. Housekeeper Linda Hoffman Pugh, she described reoccurring nighttime bedwetting by JonBenet. This was allegedly very embarrassing and frustrating for Patsy. And also, she testified that Burke sometimes would smear feces in his sister's bed on walls. He was having some behavioral issues. There was chronic genital findings in JonBenet's medical evidence that some interpret as signs of repeated irritation or trauma. Possible explanations run from aggressive wiping related to frequent bedwetting, and some have even gone as far as saying a form of sexual abuse that was going on within the home. To an unknown outsider, though, nothing has been definitely proven. So Thomas continues to fold these details into his picture of a mother already under considerable strain. Officially, the Ramseys said that they came home from the Whites' Christmas. They put the kids straight to bed and had a quiet night before their planned trip. Thomas rejects this version flat out. JonBenet's small intestine contained fresh pineapple, meaning she ate not long before she died. And there was no pineapple served at the Whites party, he's saying. Now, I have heard something completely different. I heard that there was a fruit cocktail at the Fleet Whites party, and there was pineapple contained in that fruit cocktail, and they are saying that she had had some. Now, of course, that's not 100% proof, but there is an explanation if there's fruit cocktail at the Whites' Christmas party. What's most important is that investigators found a bowl of pineapple and a glass on the Ramseys' kitchen/dining room table with Burke's fingerprints on at least one of these items. To Thomas, this shows that after the family got up, JonBenet was awake in the kitchen and Burke was up with her, and Patsy was either in the room or at least aware of what was happening. Later interviews with Burke Ramsey, which Thomas didn't have when he wrote his, talking about the Dr. Phil time, guys, only reinforced the idea that the kids didn't simply go straight to bed and stay there. He also notes the parents shifting stories about tucking the children in. Each parent at one point claims to be the one who did it, which can be read either as innocent confusion or a sign that the kids were put to bed more than once that night. Which, as a mom myself, I've had tucked my kids in, read the story, did the whole bathroom routine, got them in the bed, sang to them, left, and then for them to just come out and be, Mommy, I want this, Mommy, I want that. And then you bring them back and you have to do the whole routine all over again. That is a possibility. Thomas's handling of Burke is a key difference between his theory and the more aggressive Burke did it line, which was pushed by others. He does not believe Burke killed JonBenet. And in his reconstruction, Burke wakes up late, goes downstairs for a snack, and eats pineapple. JonBenet either follows him down or is awakened and joins him, and perhaps taking pineapple from his bowl. Afterward, Burke goes back upstairs, either on his own doing or because he was told to, and is not present during this fatal blow. Now, Thomas thinks Burke may have heard some commotion, but was shielded from what actually happened and probably didn't piece it together until much later. Thomas goes on to say that when profilers look at true kidnapping cases, this crime does not fit any known pattern. That's true. I'll agree with that one. But the only serious prop, he says, to the intruder theory is the partial male touch DNA that is found on JonBenet's clothing, but that is not blood, semen, or saliva. It is low-level contact DNA, which can be explained in other ways. And that is true, such as contamination during manufacturing and handling of the clothing before you bought it. That's a good example right there. Thomas does say that he considers the DNA important, but not decisive in this crime. When it comes to John Ramsey, Thomas is less certain about the specifics, but does not see him as the one who delivered this head blow. He tends to think that John was asleep during the initial incident. In his telling, Patsy wakes him at some point and tells John what has happened, and then John then becomes involved in shaping this cover story. Okay, well, then you'd have to believe that a father is woken up out of a deep sleep and said, I've accidentally killed my daughter. Right? And then he's just going to quickly go along with that. So that's two people who did not intend to kill their daughter that night. And they're just going to miraculously think rationally and are just going to go ahead and cover this whole thing up that quickly. I don't know. He goes on to say that John then becomes involved in shaping this cover story. Together, they present a coordinated front the next morning. Thomas notes several things that, in his view, point to some level of involvement, such as John's beeline to JonBenet's body in the basement as if he already knew where she was. He did go right there. True. There was a rapid decision to hire lawyers and manage communication through attorneys. Not uncommon. That's me saying it. That is not uncommon to go ahead and if they think that they're being looked at right from the beginning, I would want to get an attorney too. Thomas also says that their refusal to sit down for the early unrestricted interviews was a red flag to him, and their unusual request to see written copies of their prior statements and to get potential interview questions in advance, which is not how homicide suspects are normally handled. I'm sorry, but if I thought they were looking at me, not only would I hire an attorney right away, but yes, I would want to know the questions in advance because I had just lost my daughter. I'm probably on Xanax or some sort of tranquilizer just to keep me calm because I'd lost my daughter, and I know that they're looking at me as a suspect. I would want to know my questions in advance. Thomas is reading these moves as the actions of parents who are carefully managing this narrative rather than turning everything over to investigators. But I strongly disagree with that. Here's the thing. I feel that if either a parent accidentally caused JonBenét's fatal injury, it is more plausible that John would choose to protect Patsy than Patsy protecting John. Thomas then turns to the ligature, the garrote that was made from a broken piece of one of Patsy's paintbrushes, and also a cord from inside the house. The way it was assembled and tightened has often been described as staged rather than a natural tool of somebody creating this knot by a practice strangler. Thomas does believe the strangulation occurred after the head blow while JonBenet was already unconscious as part of a staging and not as the original cause of her collapse. Medical findings support a sequence in which the head trauma came first and the ligature killing came later. There are no classic signs of a conscious victim struggling to breathe, and everything suggests she was not fighting for her life when the cord was applied. The estimated interval between the head injury and strangulation is often put somewhere between roughly 45 minutes and 2 hours. In Thomas's theory, JonBenet is then taken down to the small windowless wine cellar that's located in the basement. And this is a secluded spot where he's saying someone could work without being easily seen. He believes Patsy uses this location to stage this crime scene. This includes the position of the body and the use of her paintbrush as a garrote. Just stop right there about his theory. How could a woman, a mother, in the situation she's in emotionally and physically, carry her own child, who quite possibly is dead weight at this point, down potentially 2 flights of stairs? And on top of that, dealing with the emotions of knowing she did it. She just went too far in her corporal punishment, if you want to call it. She went too far and is shocked by that because I don't think anybody denies that Patsy loved her child. I think the theory is that she lost her mind and kind of lost it and went after her child. Went too far. The agony and the realization of you going too far to the point where she could be dead or she's almost dead, and now you need to stage this kidnapping and this strangulation and all that, and carry her down 2 flights of stairs. I don't buy it. Now, there was urine on JonBenet's clothing, and they had found a change of clothes in a bathroom, and bedwetting and cleanup would support why there would be clothes in the bathroom, a change of clothes, right? Doesn't direct me immediately towards something sinister. A major plank of Thomas's argument is his outright rejection of this intruder theory. Now, he points out there was no clear point of forced entry and no classic signs of a break-in. Now, I know Lou Smith would disagree with that. But Thomas says no credible footprints in the snow pointed to an outsider. There wasn't a complete layer of snow in all areas. It had only snowed a little bit, and there were some areas that were shaded or colder than others, and there was not a complete layer of snow everywhere. The area around the broken basement window did not show disturbed debris in a way that convinced him, Thomas, that anyone had climbed through it. No foreign DNA at the scene had ever been conclusively matched to a suspect, and it makes little sense in his view. Now remember, this is Thomas's theory, the Patsy theory, not necessarily mine. But in his view, for a kidnapper to sit inside the family's home, composing a 2.5-page ransom letter on their stationery with their pen, then murder a child and leave her body behind instead of taking her. He just doesn't find that plausible. There is no obvious reason for a stranger to break a housewife's paintbrush and improvise a weapon for materials found from a basement. I guess if you're desperate and if there was an intruder and you intended on having your way with JonBenet and the intruder goes too, I could see him not coming there prepared for a death. It's kind of right back at you, Thomas, about your theory about Patsy going too far and lost it. I don't think if that's the case that she would have expected that she would have gone that far where she would have killed her daughter. I feel the same way about the intruder. The intruder could have been somebody who just admired JonBenet and was a child predator and came there to have his way with her with the intention of not killing her. Well, then at that point, he wouldn't have necessarily brought weapons with him either and would have needed things from around the house. John killing JonBenet theory is really weak to me because it leans heavily on interpreting that the sexual assault evidence one way, even though many details remain ambiguous. And there is little else that strongly supports this version. But by contrast, a stressed mother losing her temper over bedwetting is at least conceptually easier to fit into the broader household context. But I do struggle with it. I do. Putting this all together, Thomas reconstructed a timeline. It looks like this in substance, that the Ramseys come home late from the Whites' Christmas party. And contrary to their official story, the night does not end with the kids simply being tucked in. Later, he says, Burke and JonBenet are awake in the kitchen, eating pineapple, and Patsy is there or at least aware of them being there. And then after the snack, Burke likely goes back upstairs. JonBenet eventually returns to her room, wets the bed while still in her party clothes, and Patsy discovers this wet bed. Already under immense stress, Thomas says, she snaps and hits JonBenet in the head with a heavy object, a flashlight, that mag light. And then the child suffers a catastrophic skull fracture because of this. Believing either that her daughter is dead or beyond meaningful help, and fearing the destruction of the family's reputation, she decides to panic and decides to cover it up and stage a kidnapping. She writes the long ransom note on her own pad with her own pen and breaks a paintbrush to fashion a garrote, strangles JonBenet while the child is unconscious, and then moves her to the basement wine cellar room. I not seeing that. At some point, John becomes involved and helps with the staging or the aftermath of this. And then the parents coordinate their story together. And in the morning, Patsy makes this 911 call, which I just played for you, which sounded extremely authentic to me. Police walk into a crime scene that, in Thomas's eyes, looks contrived rather than like a genuine abduction. One of my biggest issues is why leave her in the basement wine cellar if it's made to look like a kidnapping? And if Patsy wanted to cover this crime, why call the police fully knowing that they would come in droves, likely finding JonBenet once they searched the house? Doesn't sound like that makes any sense at all. And honestly, the same concept is for the intruder as well. If you broke in and you kill her, you leave her, but then why take the time to write a huge long note? The child could be found as soon as the parents call the police. And if he thought that she wouldn't be found for a long time in the wine cellar, decomposition starts immediately. Now, the smell would have been putrid in that house within a day, even in December. It was cold and all that, but at some point within the next 24, 48 hours, there would have been a smell coming up from the bottom basement. Heat rises. The smell would have come up through the vents. They would have known about it. Even the intruder theory and the Patsy theory, it doesn't make sense why the body would be left there and go out of their way to write such a long note to make everybody believe it was a kidnapping when it was so easy. Go downstairs in that basement and find her. A mother killing her child doesn't sound plausible to me. Most mothers do not kill their children because that maternal bond is one of the most strongest and most biologically reinforced attachments in human psychology. We mothers are hardwired towards protection and nurturing of our children. We have normal hormonal systems that possess strong empathy and bonding. In nearly all families, a mother's identity is deeply tied to safeguarding her children, making violence towards them so rare. When a crime like that does occur, it is usually linked to extreme and abnormal circumstances like mental illness. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen because there are cases of mothers killing their children, but it's very, very rare. And we have seen Patsy holding it together in interviews. We have seen her carry herself with poise and respect. And she doesn't sound like she's mentally ill at all when she speaks. And there is nothing from prior to this to tell any of us that she was mentally unstable. In other words, mothers almost never harm their children under ordinary psychological circumstances. They just don't. And it typically requires a profound disruption in mental stability. Patsy was ultimately exonerated, and some experts came forward saying it was not her handwriting. And we all know that she passed away on June 24th, 2006. She was adamant and outspoken about her innocence till the day she died.
How do you remember her?
Well, I mean, like all parents would say, she was a perfect child, but the thing that I remember about her was that if I would frown, she would look at me and say, "Dad, I don't like that face." And I'd smile and she said, "That's better." And that's just the way she was.
She loved her daddy. She loved her daddy. She was daddy's girl.
Miss Ramsey, you found the note. It was a handwritten note, 3 pages.
The note was lying across the 3 pages across the run of one of the stair treads. And it was kind of dimly lit because it was very early in the morning. And I started to read it, and it was addressed to John. It said, "Mr. Ramsey." And it said, "We have your daughter." And it just wasn't registering. And I may have gotten through another sentence, like, "We have your daughter," and I don't know if I got any further than that.
She is clearly distraught, clearly under the influence of some sort of medication to help get her through this. A lot of people criticized her by the way she spoke, slurring her words. But what would you do? What would you do? This is just January 1st that this interview was taken. And her daughter was found dead 4 days earlier. Okay, I want you to think about that and what you would need to do just to get up out of bed and to walk around. And I just see everything as normal, what I'm seeing here.
And I immediately ran back upstairs and pushed open her door, and she was not in her bed. And I screamed for John.
It said, "Don't call the police," that type of thing. And I told Patsy, "Call the police immediately." And I think I ran through the house a bit.
We went to check our son to
Checked our
see.
son's room.
He was.
Sometimes he sleeps in there. And we just were.
We were just frantic, and I dialed the police and 911, and she was trying to calm me down, and I said our child had been kidnapped, and she was trying to very methodically, and I was just screaming, "Send help, send help."
How did you happen later to look in the basement?
Well, we'd waited until after the time that the call was supposed to have been made to us. And one of the detectives asked me and my friend who was there to go through every inch of the house, see if there's anything that was unusual or abnormal that looked out of place.
They're looking for clues,
I think she was asking us to do that more to give us something to do to occupy our mind. And so we started in the basement, and we have one room in the basement that
Coincidentally.
when I opened the door, there are no windows in that room, and I turned the light on, and
She was in the room.
it was her. I'd hoped that she was still okay, but I could tell that she probably wasn't. I screamed and carried her upstairs. And
Was she hidden in any way?
no,
When will you go back to Boulder?
soon.
In a matter of days, you would think?
Mhm.
It's going to be difficult.
It's going to be very difficult for us. When we first left, we didn't think we could go back. But
I said the only reason I will go back is to help them find out who did this. That is the only reason. And I will do that.
New DNA evidence that wasn't tested before, as well as current DNA that they've had on file for a long time and have it retested. Here's the thing, guys. If John or Patsy, even though she's deceased, if they had anything to do with this, why not just let it go? Why would John Ramsey be pushing so hard to have this DNA tested? Think about that. You'd be like, hey, I got away with murder all this time. I'm not going to open up a new can of worms. It's just something to think about. I would really love it if you commented below and let me know what you guys think about Steve Thomas's theory, the Patsy theory. Let me know what you guys are thinking. I know it can be a very heated, controversial case. It makes a lot of people upset. There's a lot of theories out there. I have not determined what I officially feel. It's always ever changing. There was a time I did think Patsy and John were involved, but as of right now, and actually being a mother, and since I've had children, I've pretty much ruled out Patsy. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I'm saying it's probably most likely not the case. Make sure you guys comment below, subscribe, like, and share. We'll have more videos on JonBenet soon. And yeah, I so appreciate you guys. Thank you. And you guys have a great day.